How does a company keep selling wonder to children, parents, and grandparents at the same time? Most entertainment products have a short life. A film opens, captures attention, earns revenue, and eventually disappears beneath the next release. Audiences change. Technology changes. Childhood heroes are replaced by new ones. Even successful studios often struggle to remain culturally relevant for more than a generation. Disney has faced every one of those pressures. The company began in an era of theatrical animation. It later moved through broadcast television, cable networks, home video, digital distribution, and streaming. It has watched consumer attention fragment across more platforms, while global competition for entertainment has become more intense. Yet Disney characters created decades ago still appear in cinemas, homes, stores, theme parks, and family traditions around the world. Mickey Mouse is nearly a century old. Disney princesses created in different eras continue to reach new audiences. More recent additions from Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars now exist alongside those older properties without completely replacing them. The common explanation is simple: Disney succeeds because it owns famous characters. There is truth in that idea. Recognizable characters attract attention, reduce marketing risk, and give audiences an immediate emotional connection. But famous characters alone cannot explain Disney's longevity. Many entertainment companies have created popular characters. Many have produced blockbuster films. Some have owned valuable libraries of stories. Far fewer have maintained meaningful relationships with customers from childhood into adulthood, then reached those same customers again when they became parents. A character can become famous after one successful release. A brand that remains relevant for generations requires something more. Disney is no longer simply a film studio. Its operations extend across theatrical entertainment, television, streaming, theme parks, resorts, cruise ships, consumer products, and licensing. A story introduced in one part of the company can continue living in many others. A child may first encounter a character in a film. Later, that character appears in a television series, on a streaming platform, inside a toy store, or as part of a theme park attraction. Years afterward, the same person may return to that story with their own children. The important detail is not merely that Disney distributes content through many channels. Large media companies do that as well. The more interesting question is what happens to a Disney story after its first commercial release. For most studios, the release is the main event. For Disney, it may be only the beginning of a much longer economic life. The same story can be watched, owned, visited, collected, licensed, redesigned, and introduced again to a different generation. That creates a puzzle. Is Disney's enduring appeal really the result of producing memorable characters? Or has the company built a larger system that prevents those characters from becoming ordinary pieces of old entertainment? To understand why Disney continues attracting multiple generations, we need to look beyond the films themselves and examine how the company learned to connect stories, experiences, products, and distribution into one expanding commercial structure. The foundations of that structure were built much earlier than many people realize. When Walt Disney opened Disneyland in 1955, the park was not designed as an isolated business. It was part of a broader strategy that connected storytelling with physical experiences. Even before the gates opened, Disney had already partnered with the American Broadcasting Company to produce the television program Disneyland. The show entertained audiences, introduced new stories, and at the same time familiarized millions of viewers with a theme park that had not yet welcomed its first guests. This relationship was unusual for its time. Television promoted the park. The park reinforced the films. The films strengthened the characters. The characters increased demand for licensed products. Instead of treating each business as an independent source of revenue, Disney gradually created a network in which every activity increased the value of the others. That pattern continued as the company expanded. Animation remained important, but Disney did not rely on theatrical releases alone. Television brought familiar characters into living rooms every week. Home video allowed families to revisit stories long after they left cinemas. Consumer products kept those stories visible between releases. Theme parks transformed fictional worlds into places that people could physically experience. Each new platform extended the relationship rather than replacing the previous one. This became increasingly important because entertainment consumption was changing. Audiences were no longer limited to visiting movie theaters. Cable television, digital media, streaming platforms, mobile devices, and interactive entertainment created countless alternatives for consumer attention. At the same time, global media companies competed aggressively for intellectual property capable of attracting loyal audiences. Many companies responded by producing more content. Disney expanded differently. Instead of asking only how to create another successful film, the company repeatedly asked how a successful story could continue creating value after audiences had finished watching. That distinction became visible across the company's business portfolio. According to the Walt Disney Company, its operations today span entertainment, direct-to-consumer services, sports experiences, consumer products, and licensing. These businesses serve different markets, but they frequently rely on the same collection of stories and characters. Rather than existing separately, they continuously reinforce one another through shared intellectual property. This creates an experience that few competitors can easily replicate. A child who watches an animated film may later encounter the same world inside a theme park attraction. A family vacation strengthens emotional attachment to those characters. Licensed products bring that experience back into everyday life, years later. Streaming platforms make those stories immediately available to a new generation without requiring expensive rediscovery. The customer does not simply consume entertainment once. The relationship evolves through different forms over many years. Importantly, this approach does not eliminate the need for creativity. Every generation expects new stories, new technologies, and new cultural references. Older intellectual property alone cannot satisfy changing audiences forever. Disney has repeatedly needed to refresh its portfolio while preserving the emotional familiarity that defines its brand. That challenge became even more significant as competition intensified during the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Strong brands alone were no longer enough. The companies that controlled the future of entertainment would increasingly depend on the quality and scale of the worlds they could continuously develop. At that point, Disney faced a strategic decision that would reshape the company for decades to come. That decision was not simply to produce more films. It was to secure more worlds that could operate across the entire Disney system. The shift began in 2006 when Disney acquired Pixar. The deal gave Disney control of characters and stories from films such as Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles. But the value extended far beyond animation. Those properties could support theatrical releases, television programming, merchandise attractions, and long-term franchise development. 3 years later, Disney acquired Marvel Entertainment. This was a much broader strategic move. Marvel brought thousands of characters, but more importantly, it offered an interconnected universe that could generate sequels, spin-offs, streaming series, consumer products, games, and physical experiences. Then, in 2012, Disney acquired Lucasfilm. With Star Wars, Disney gained another global story world with decades of audience loyalty. It could be expanded through new films, television series, merchandise, theme park lands, and digital distribution. The acquisition did not simply add another famous name to Disney's portfolio. It added another intellectual property system with multiple ways to create value over time. The acquisition of major entertainment assets from 21st Century Fox in 2019 expanded that portfolio again. Disney gained access to additional film and television properties while increasing the scale of its content library for direct-to-consumer distribution. Taken together, these deals changed the structure of the company. Disney was no longer relying mainly on its traditional animated characters. It now controlled a broad collection of story worlds that could appeal to children, families, teenagers, and adults. That reduced dependence on any single audience segment and gave the company more opportunities to keep customers inside the Disney ecosystem as their tastes changed. The financial structure of the business shows why this mattered. In fiscal year 2024, Disney's Experiences segment generated more than $34 billion in revenue and more than $9 billion in operating income. Consumer products generated more than $4 billion in revenue and roughly $2 billion in operating income. These figures reveal that films are only one part of the value chain. A theatrical release may create global attention, but the economic life of the property can continue through streaming subscriptions, park attendance, hotel stays, cruises, merchandise, games, and licensing. The stronger the story world, the more places Disney can use it. This creates a different risk profile from that of a traditional film studio. A studio may depend heavily on the performance of each new release. Disney can use a successful release to strengthen several businesses at once. Even after the box office cycle ends, the property can continue generating demand elsewhere. The acquisitions, therefore, did more than expand Disney's content library. They expanded the number of intellectual properties that could move through the same commercial system. Pixar, Marvel, and Star Wars were not valuable only because audiences recognized them. They were valuable because Disney could connect each of them to distribution experiences, products, and long-term franchise development. The critical change was not the size of Disney's character collection. It was the scale of the machine built around those characters. And once that machine became visible, the role of the film itself began to look very different. The film is not the final product. It is the entry point. A traditional studio creates value mainly by producing content and selling access to it. Revenue comes from theaters, distribution agreements, licensing, and later releases. Once the audience moves on, the economic value of that title usually declines. Disney operates differently. A successful film can introduce a story, but the company does not depend on that story remaining valuable in only one format. It can move the same intellectual property through several businesses, each one extending the life of the others. A theatrical release creates attention. Disney Plus keeps the story available after the cinema cycle ends. Consumer products turn characters into objects that remain inside homes. Theme parks transform fictional worlds into physical experiences. Game sequels, television series, live performances, and new adaptations create additional reasons to return. Each layer changes the role of the original film. It is no longer only a product sold once. It becomes the first stage in a longer commercial process. This helps explain why the acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm were so important. Disney did not merely buy collections of popular characters. It acquired story worlds capable of producing repeated interactions across different parts of the company. Marvel is a clear example. A character can appear in a film, continue on a streaming series, become part of a theme park attraction, enter a video game, and support years of licensed products. Each new appearance can renew interest in earlier content. Each successful release can increase demand in businesses that have very different economics from filmmaking. The same pattern applies to Star Wars and Pixar. A new series can bring attention back to an older film. A theme park visit can strengthen the emotional value of a character. A parent who remembers a story from childhood can introduce it to a child through streaming merchandise, or a family vacation. The system therefore does more than extract revenue from intellectual property. It repeatedly refreshes the cultural relevance of that property. This is the deeper advantage. Disney's most valuable asset is not any single film. It is the ability to take one story and make it useful again in a different format, for a different occasion, and often for a different generation. That ability creates a reinforcing cycle. New content renews attention. Attention supports streaming and product demand. Products and experiences deepen emotional attachment. That attachment increases the likelihood that audiences will return when the next release appears. The result is not automatic. Disney still has to create stories people care about. It must respond to changing tastes, avoid overusing familiar franchises, and maintain quality across very different businesses. A weak film cannot become valuable simply because the company owns a theme park or a streaming platform. But when the story works, Disney can extend its value further than a conventional studio can. That is why the common belief that Disney wins because it owns famous characters is incomplete. Famous characters are only the visible part. The real strength lies in the infrastructure that keeps those characters active across media, products, experiences, and time. Disney is not simply preserving old stories. It is continuously rebuilding the conditions that allow those stories to matter again. Seen from this perspective, Disney has not spent decades protecting a collection of famous characters. It has spent decades building a system that keeps those characters economically and culturally alive. That distinction explains why the company has remained relevant across generations, while many successful films gradually become nostalgic memories. A film eventually reaches the end of its theatrical run. A story does not have to. Disney extends that story into new formats, new technologies, and new customer experiences. Every successful adaptation attraction, streaming release product, or live experience creates another opportunity for audiences to reconnect with the same intellectual property. That is why time works differently for Disney. For many entertainment companies, time reduces the value of a successful release. For Disney, time can increase the value of intellectual property when the company continues investing in new ways for audiences to experience it. The company's own investment priorities reflect this logic. In 2023, Disney announced plans to invest approximately $60 billion over 10 years to expand its parks, cruise business, and experiences. This was not simply an investment in tourism capacity. It represented another expansion of the environments where Disney's intellectual property could continue creating value long after a film had left theaters. The strategy follows the same pattern that began decades earlier. Stories become experiences. Experiences strengthen emotional attachment. That attachment increases the value of future stories. Future stories then renew interest across the entire system once again. The relationship is circular rather than linear. This also explains why Disney continues acquiring, developing, and carefully managing intellectual property instead of treating content as a series of independent projects. The company is not trying to maximize the lifetime revenue of a single film. It is trying to maximize the lifetime relevance of an intellectual property. Revenue follows that relevance across multiple businesses. When viewed this way, Disney's competitive advantage is no longer defined by animation filmmaking or even entertainment alone. Its advantage is organizational. Very few companies possess the combination of creative capability, global distribution, consumer products, destination experiences, licensing expertise, and long-term brand management required to keep a fictional world commercially valuable across several decades. That capability cannot be reproduced simply by creating another popular character. It requires an entire operating system built around intellectual property. This changes the way Disney's success should be understood. The company's greatest asset is not any individual film franchise or character. Its greatest asset is the ability to repeatedly reactivate the same stories in ways that feel meaningful to different audiences, through different products, at different moments in their lives. Once that becomes clear, Disney looks less like a company that produces entertainment and more like a company that manages the life cycle of intellectual property. Its films introduce the stories. Its ecosystem allows those stories to grow. And its long-term success comes from ensuring that every new generation finds a reason to begin the journey all over again.